In this video, I'll be introducing you to statistics, although I would say everybody has some idea of what statistics are and have been exposed to them, but let's talk about some basics that you should be familiar with. So first of all, my question for you would be, where do we use statistics in the real world? And I think that it wouldn't be very difficult to come up with some ideas for, or some answers to this question. The first one that comes to my mind is the business world. In fact, these days, business is very competitive. Often you're competing not only with people in your own area, but possibly even with people throughout the world, especially with all the online businesses that are going on, or with all that Amazon does. So when big companies make decisions, they want to do it more than just based on a hunch, because often it can make the difference between being successful or not, or even going out of business. And so big businesses will hire statisticians and people like that collect data, and they help businesses to make the right decisions about really big things. All right, so another area would be politics. Of course, I think we all realize, especially when we go through an election time, that politicians are always trying to convince us of something or help or make us believe that something's true, and sometimes it may or may not be true, but certainly we see a lot of statistics in politics. Actually, in government in general, one of their main jobs is to look out for the population and to try to, they collect data and they use that data to help make decisions about policy and all sorts of things. And then another one would be medicine. In terms of treatments, actually in so many places, there's a lot of medical research that is done, and a lot of that involves collecting data. When new drugs are tested, there's a lot of statistics that are involved in that whole process. In fact, I think we can all relate to what's going on in terms of the coronavirus or what has happened there. Certainly early on, the data or the information that was coming out of China led, I guess, most countries to act maybe slowly than they might have otherwise if they had had a better idea of what was actually going on. And in fact, there's all sorts of people rushing and working hard to find treatments and to come up with a vaccine. And all these things involve the collection of statistics. And you can see that in a situation like this, statistics are very important. And learning the truth and knowing the truth is extremely important. Knowing what drugs work or don't work to treat a disease, extremely important. All right, so let's go ahead and look at some basic terminology related to statistics, and we'll look at this example here. It says Sandy is a representative for the student body government at Brookhaven College. The college is adding a new fast food restaurant to the campus, and Sandy is polling students to see which of 3 restaurants should be chosen. Now, the first thing I want to say is I made this up. This is not true, so don't get excited if you like one of these restaurants. And actually, I have a mistake here I need to correct. Oops, I forgot to put coronavirus. This should be Whataburger. So Chick-fil-A, Whataburger, or Taco Bell. She conducted a poll of 100 students who attend class during the day to determine which restaurant should be added. Now, it does say students that attend class during the day. Now, if you didn't know, they don't actually have these restaurants, or the restaurants at Brookhaven are not open in the evening, and so that's why you would want to just poll daytime students. So the results are as follows. So it gives you a percent for each of the 3 restaurants. So we're supposed to fill in the blanks here. Now, if you have some knowledge of statistics, you may, or maybe you want to give it a shot, you might try to answer these first and then watch the video. All right, so on number 1, data is numerical information. So in in this case, really students are choosing between one of three places, and then based on the results, these percentages were put together. So the final data were the percents here. Number 2, statistics is the art and science of gathering, organizing, analyzing, and drawing conclusions from data collected in an experiment. Number 3, descriptive statistics is the branch of statistics concerned with collecting, organizing, summarizing, and presenting data. So this is where we start when we do statistics. And then once that's all been done, inferential statistics is the branch of statistics that involves making generalizations about and drawing conclusions from data collected. So really, this is the reason why we collect statistics. We're hoping that the statistics are going to tell us something. This is the reason why we do statistics. All right, number 5. In statistics, the population is the set containing all the people or objects whose properties are to be described and analyzed by the data collector. Now, in our case, the population would be all daytime students at Brookhaven College. Number 6, a sample is a subset of the population. Now, it's usually not practical to try to poll the whole population. In fact, most of the time we just look at a sample. So in this case, the sample would be the 100 Brookhaven students. And again, these are students that go to class during the day. Number 7, a sample is representative if it is a small replica of the entire population with regard to income, education, gender, race, religion, political affiliation, age, etc. All right, so in this case, Sandy was the one that did this poll. And what if Sandy were very young, either a high school student that's in the dual enrollment program, or maybe a freshman right out of high school, and she just polled all her friends? Well, then that would not be representative of the whole population. In fact, ideally, you'd like to get maybe a database that has all students in daytime classes, and then have some kind of program randomly choose 100 people to poll. That's probably not the most practical, so maybe you would just go throughout the campus throughout the day and survey students in different buildings and throughout the campus. So that might be a good way to get a representative sample. Number 8, a sample is random if it is obtained in such a way that every item or every person in the population has an equal chance of being selected for the sample. Again, if I had access to all students who attend during the day, and I could get a random list of those students, then that would be the way to make it most random. But again, that may or may not be practical. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So it says there are 3 important questions to ask when you're given statistical information. Number 1, who did the study? Who collected the stats? In fact, a lot of times people are using the stats to convince you of something, and you want to make sure that they don't have an agenda. Or if they do, you certainly want to look at their stats quite carefully, because they're obviously biased. They have a reason for you to look at their stats with favor that's going to help them out. So an example would be a study on smoking by Philip Morris. Now Philip Morris, let me go back here. Philip Morris actually are the owners of Marlboro cigarettes, and so obviously they would have an interest in such a study. And so if there truly was something good about smoking and they thought that it could be studied, they would take it to an independent group and have them release the study, and then that way perhaps it's less biased. You still have to be careful, because if they paid for it, then certainly this independent group would be more motivated to shed some positive light on this company. Another example would be Sandy and her little poll for students at Brookhaven. Maybe she really wants Chick-fil-A to win, and so she kind of manipulated the numbers a little bit, or she found a way to make sure that the most votes were collected for her favorite choice. All right, let's move on to number 2. How large is the sample? So again, if we look back at the example with Sandy, if she only talked to like 5, 10, 15, 20 people, that's certainly probably not enough to make that kind of decision. In fact, some people might argue that 100 people aren't enough. So that's an important question when you look at statistical information. Another example I would give to you is this information that I've heard in the past. 4 out of 5 dentists recommend sugarless gum for their patients who chew gum. Now, I've never seen any detailed information about this data. Did they ask 5 people? Did they ask 10? I don't know. So it would be important to know more about the details. How big was the sample? I actually did a little research on this, and this tends to sound like something that most dentists would agree with, that I guess after you eat, it does make sense to chew some gum. It can help in terms of keeping your teeth more clean. But anyway, let's move on to number 3. And then finally, is the sample representative? Is it biased? And so, again, we talked a little bit about having an agenda in number 1. This kind of goes back at that same question. So we already talked a little bit about being representative and being biased. So we're going to go ahead and stop the video right here. But before I do, I want to finish with this saying that is a common saying about statistics. Numbers don't lie, but they can be manipulated. And I would say that there's definitely a lot of stats in our society where we need to be skeptical, because people are constantly trying to influence us and get us to believe something that may or may not be true. So it's good to have a basic understanding of statistics so that we're not manipulated.